I see a lot of people who, they're struggling and they think, well, the problem is that I have an online course instead of a membership. Or the problem is that I launched with a webinar instead of a challenge. Or the problem is that I use this strategy over that strategy or something like that. And they're doing that because they know something's not working and they've heard someone else talk about this other thing that worked for them. So they think, it's this is the problem. When in reality, for most of those people, it's not the type of launch they're doing. It's not the type of product they're offering. Fundamentally, it's the messaging. It's the more basic piece of, are you actually creating and offering something that your people want and need? And are you explaining to them in the right language why it is? Welcome to the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast, where being a badass has less to do with what you wear and what music you listen to, and everything to do with whether you've got the thriving online business of your dreams. I'm your renegade thinking Harvard Law grad turned online entrepreneur host, Bobby Klink. In my years building my thriving business, the most important lesson I've learned is that being a badass online marketer isn't about secret strategies or ninja tactics. It's about doing the basic stuff right and showing the F up. So each week here on the show, you'll get clear, easy to execute guidance on how to build your online business and a swift kick in the ass or two to make sure you're getting it done. Hey there, welcome to episode 176 of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klink, and I'm excited for today's show because we're going to be talking about a very important topic. And hopefully, you're going to bear with me on this one, and hopefully, you're going to come around to my point of view here. Specifically, today, we're going to be talking about why you need to understand the why of marketing. In other words, you can't simply ask the what and the how. You have to understand why it is that you're doing the things you're doing in your business, in your marketing. That's what we're going to be talking about. And again, I'm hoping you're going to bear with me on this because this is something that I know a lot of entrepreneurs don't love to do. A lot of entrepreneurs want us to simply be able to tell them what to do, and then they can do it. And I'm going to explain why that's not realistic, why if you're building kind of an online business like, I am based upon information, services, any kind of information product, why you've got to understand the why behind marketing. Before we get to that, though, I want to, again, extend an invitation for you to join me at our upcoming virtual event called Badass Online Marketing Live. It's an event happening December 4th through 6th of this year. It's a 3-day event where we're going to be going deep into the question of what is it that you really need to be doing as an entrepreneur to build a business, number one, that you love, but number two, that's bringing in money consistently for you. And so this is not going to be an event where I'm giving you shiny strategies that I want you to chase, because I don't believe that most entrepreneurs need more strategies. We're going to be talking about the why. We're going to be talking about the principles behind the marketing at the event. We're going to be helping entrepreneurs to understand what it is that they need to be doing and how to do it, and figuring it out all from the perspective of a framework, which is something broader than thinking in terms of strategies. So that's what we're going to be doing. And just so you know, I don't get into doing anything halfway, and I don't do things where it is fluff. If you're thinking to yourself, well, I've heard a lot of these virtual events are just full of fluff, no valuable information, blah, 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 I'm with you. A lot of them are. A lot of people, as they shifted from live events to virtual events, missed that a big part of the live event is the inspiration. It's the energy. It's being in the room together. We didn't. My team and I have thought about that. We have designed this from the ground up to work as a virtual event, but we're also being very intentional about making sure that we're providing the best of live events. instead of trying to duct tape together Zoom and some random website we put together and all this, like most of the people are doing in the space, we decided to pay a little bit more money to use a platform that's actually built for these kinds of events. And because it's built for these kinds of events, it has networking built in. It has the ability for you to meet with the other people and build the connections. The stuff that I love about live events, candidly, some of my business besties are people I met at live events, and I want to give you that same experience. So we're doing that, plus delivering actionable content that you'll be able to walk away and really have an additional level of clarity about the business you should be building. So you can get all the details by heading over to bobbyklink.com/bomb live. That's BOM live. bobbyklink.com/bomb live. Now, with that, I want to dive into today's episode. And I'm actually going to, I hope, keep today's episode kind of short. Not really short, but kind of short. The first thing I want to point out to you, and the first reason why you need to understand the why of marketing, is really simple. It's that if you're building an online information-based business, that means any kind of course, any kind of membership, any kind of coaching or group coaching, or your services, fundamentally, what you're building is a marketing business. I'm not building a legal business and never was with my templates. I was building a marketing business. We are in the marketing business. And that's something that's very different. And it's something that really sets us apart, because if you think about it like a local business, let's just talk about your local restaurant in your town. Your local restaurant is not fundamentally a marketing business. Fundamentally, they are in the business of delivering food, of delivering a quality experience for people when they go to dine there. And so their product is kind of the big thing, but that means they've got to understand a lot of things about that product and they've got to put it together, et cetera. Well, we're different. We're not putting out a product that has a cost, that has logistics, that has all of those things like a traditional business is. This is one of the reasons, if you think about it, that we pay way higher commissions than a lot of people in this space. Like when a lot of people hear the notion that for an affiliate commission, you'll get paid 50% of the revenue, they're like, are you crazy? That's because in most industries, there's no way they could afford to pay 50% of revenue. Like they're not even making a 50% profit. Well, for us, each additional product we sell largely has zero cost. Now, if you're in the service, you're serving clients, it's different. But if you have a course, if you have a membership, if you have all those things, selling another one maybe costs you a nickel. And I mean that seriously, because it costs you that only in the sense of a little bit of support and a little bit of tech, et cetera. The real cost is in acquiring your customers, because fundamentally, we are marketing businesses. That's what we are. And when you think about that and recognize that we are ultimately really marketing businesses, it makes sense, right? Because you would expect that your local restaurant has to have expertise and understand at a deep fundamental level some of the stuff about what they are and what their product is and what they do. And what I mean by that is you would expect them to know about cooking. Again, could you start a restaurant and just, bring in a chef who does it? Well, sure you could. But what happens if that chef leaves? And this is the problem. This is what I'm saying. You've got to have this competence in your business of someone who actually understands what you do at a deep level. So, the restaurants that succeed, at least local restaurants, they're going to have people, they're going to have someone who's running the ship who really gets how to do all of these different things. And it's not just the cooking, it's also the experience, and it's all of those things. Well, the same applies to you. Since you're building a marketing business, you need to have some expertise in marketing. And that means understanding the why. Again, you think about it, outside the context of literally a franchised restaurant, you wouldn't expect that you could go to a restaurant and someone would say, okay, well, someone just gave me this instruction manual and I'm just going to use this to run a restaurant. It's not how it works. And we understand that. And yet in the online space, somehow we expect that we don't need to know the why. We don't need to understand the principles. We don't need someone in our business even who understands that. We can simply follow someone's directions. It doesn't work that way because, again, you're a marketing business, so you've got to understand the marketing principles that are going on. Now, the other thing, though, that I want to talk about is that if you don't take the time to understand the why behind the marketing, you won't know what's working and what you need to change in your business. And what I mean by that is maybe you're making some profits, maybe you're making a little bit of money, but not enough, and you can't quite figure out or put your finger on what's happening, what's the problem, what's working, etc. You really have to kind of you're not going to know what to do. You're going to be in this place where you're like, I don't know what to change. And I want to use some examples here that maybe will help you to understand this. Let's talk about webinars, for example. For a long time, as I was getting into this space, I would simply try to follow someone's instructions and use their webinar deck. And what I mean is they would say, here's the slides you're going to do, here's the flow you're going to do, and I would simply follow that. But the problem is that even the people who are giving you a very detailed piece of information and kind of detailed walk through what you're covering in the webinar deck, a lot of it is going to say, well, slides, and again, I'll just make this up randomly. These won't be the right numbers, but slides 22 through 35 are pillar number 1. And that's kind of what you're told. Well, if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish with the pillars in, the core kind of what people would call the teaching part of your webinar, you're not going to know how to do that right. And also if someone says, well, slides, 6 through 8 are your origin story, but you don't really understand what an origin story is and how to tell it and how it fits in and why that fits into the broader concept, how are you going to know how to take what they did and then put your information in it? You see, it's only when you start to truly understand the why, like not just, okay, the first piece you're going to do is your credibility, your origin story, and finally get that it's not just a series of random slides about you, but it's actually meant to do a very specific thing. Or that the pillars you're teaching are meant to do a very specific thing. They're not just randomly teaching things. There, for example, you want to inspire people, make them believe it's impossible, or make them believe, it's possible for them. Make them believe that they can do it, but then also create the gap so they understand that they need some help to do it. Yeah, that's the kind of thing you need to understand, that those are your goals in the teaching piece of a webinar. That when you get that level of understanding the why and kind of what it is behind the scenes that's happening, that you're actually able to create a webinar that's going to convert. Because you then can say, okay, got it. Now for my people, here are the things I need to deal with. Here's how I can teach that. Here's how I can put that together. And most people are simply teaching you, do this, teach 3 to 5 pillars. They could be mistakes. And they just kind of teach you stuff without explaining the why. And I'm simply going to say that if you don't know the why behind it, your webinar, your video series, your challenge, whatever, if you're doing a launch, your launch vehicle is not going to convert well. Well, I don't want to say that. You might make sales, but the actual launch event will not be the reason that you make sales. But also there's this thing where, I see a lot of people who, they're struggling and they think, well, the problem is that I have an online course instead of a membership. Or the problem is that I launched with a webinar instead of a challenge. Or the problem is that I use this strategy over that strategy or something like that. And they're doing that because they know something's not working. And they've heard someone else talk about this other thing that worked for them. So they think, it's this. This is the problem. When in reality, for most of those people, it's not the type of launch they're doing. It's not the type of product they're offering. Fundamentally, it's the messaging. It's the more basic piece of, Are you actually creating and offering something that your people want and need? And are you explaining to them in the right language why it is that your solution is the solution they're looking for? But again, you only get that if you really understand the basics. And what I mean about this is understanding the basics of thinking that, all this stuff comes down to these basic principles. And this kind of leads to a similar problem, and I want to talk about it, which is that entrepreneurs, I see it over and over again, are chasing strategies. They again, it's what I talked about. They said, "Well, I tried a course and that didn't work. But I'm going to chase this. I'm going to chase this membership idea." Or, "Well, I've tried all this other stuff, but this other person is teaching me that all I need is a Facebook group, and if I create a Facebook group and follow their principles, that'll work." So they chase that. And then they say, "Oh, well, this person says I can get 10,000 followers on Instagram. Ooh, I should do that." Or more recently, "Ooh, there's this new thing called TikTok. Maybe I should go there." And that happens. And so what happens is people will hop from thing to thing to thing. And they'll do it thinking that it's somehow this strategy or the tactic that's where the problem is, and they just have to find the right one. What I will tell you is that that's not the problem. Now, I'm not going to guarantee that, changing things up won't make a difference in some cases. But what I'll tell you is if you're struggling to get a following on Facebook, the chances that you're going to just go over to Instagram and get a following aren't great. Now, it's possible. It might be that based on your particular personality and how you like to interact with people and where your people happen to be, that moving from one to the other could be a good thing. But it's not that this is kind of the panacea, that this is the solution that is going to make all of your problems go away. Because when you really understand kind of the why of marketing, what you get is fundamentally what you're doing at any social media platform is the same. You're connecting with your people. You're putting out content that is meant to bring people in and attract them. And then once they're in your world, you're connecting with them. And what I'm going to tell you is that applies whether you're on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on anywhere else. Now, there will be little differences in the tactics of how you do it, because obviously in LinkedIn, you're going to act differently than you would on Instagram, and you're going to act differently than you would on Facebook. But fundamentally, what you're doing is the same. And if you don't have that fundamental piece right, changing from one place to another is just hopping and hopping and hopping. And what's going to happen is you're going to move from one to the next without it being successful and without finding success. And you're going to blame it on that platform. And again, I want to go back to the launch methods as another example. I will hear people ask over and over and over again, should I use a webinar or a challenge or a video series or this or that or the other as a way to launch their product? And what I'll tell you is that it doesn't really matter. And this is what I want you to get, that the notion that if you believe that one of them is fundamentally different than the other, it's not a good thing. Because with each of those methods, you've got to do the same things. You've got to inspire people, make them believe and see what is possible for them if they make a change. You've got to help them take ownership so that they believe they can do it. And you've got to create the gap so they realize, hey, I can do this, but I need help. And what I need you to get is whether you use a webinar, a challenge, or a video series, you're doing the same darn thing. That's why people always laugh. For example, at my coach James Wedmore, my buddy James, he uses a video series, but he does a very different video series. Instead of doing a 3-part video series that is the standard for video series, he does an 8-part. And instead of letting it out over a period of time, he does the Netflix model and says, I'm releasing all 8, watch them and enjoy. And he'll tell you, yeah, I do it differently, but I'm still doing the same thing. And he gets that because of the principles of marketing. And this is fundamentally why I want you to get why my email only launches have worked as well. Because fundamentally with an email only launch, I can do the same things if I understand what it is that I have to accomplish. What are the principles? What are the whys behind what we're doing? And so what I want you to get here is that once you understand the why of marketing, what it is you're trying to accomplish, that's when you can tweak things. That's when things aren't quite working. You can say, okay, here's this knob over here I need to turn, and I need to adjust that. And when I make that adjustment, that's likely to be the thing that's going to turn things up. And you won't always be right, but you'll at least know where to go. And you'll understand that it's not about, hopping to some other strategy, that's not the thing. Because what I'll tell you is the most successful entrepreneurs don't hop from strategy to strategy to strategy. They ride the same horse. As I'm recording this podcast, I've had the exact same lead magnet for the legal stuff running for something like, I won't have the exact number, but something like 17 months now. And I hear people talk about, I need to change up my lead magnet. And I say, why? If it's working, you don't have to. Now, you might want to, refresh copy on your ads, but the success comes from understanding, the deeper level things and fixing those in whatever you're doing, not from jumping ship. So that's kind of the next piece is when you understand the why, you'll be able to figure out what's working and what you need to change instead of hopping from thing to thing. Now, the final reason why I'm going to tell you always need, or why you should understand the why, is because otherwise you're always going to be beholden to someone else. And what I mean by that is if you don't understand the basic principles of what you're doing in your marketing, when the market shifts and, for example, webinars just aren't working anymore, which may happen at some point, you know what? You're going to have to keep learning from someone, which means you're probably going to have to keep paying someone to teach you how to do webinars. And I want you to get this. I kind of alluded to this fact like at the beginning. Now, you can start a business like a restaurant without a chef, without being a chef. But understand that means you're always going to be beholden to having a chef who can be kind of the driving force behind your restaurant. And the most successful restaurants, the ones that are known for the things, the problem is like they can't just have an average person. They've got to have an above average chef, which means that if their chef leaves, all of a sudden they have to come up with someone else. And the same thing is going to happen to you if you don't take the time to understand why it is you're doing certain things. You will always be beholden. Maybe it'll be to a contractor. Maybe you'll say, I can outsource this and I will have a copywriter. Okay, you can, but you're always going to have to pay a copywriter. You're always going to have to pay someone to come in and figure out your messaging. You're always just going to have someone come in and do stuff. And not only are you going to have to pay them over and over and over again, you're not going to know whether or going to be in a position to judge whether what they're doing is good. And this is a point I want to make. A lot of people, and I got this idea from James Wedmore. He talks about this, that there are a lot of people out there who call themselves copywriters, who what they do is they write pretty language. They write language that sounds cool. What I'm going to tell you is that's not what you need on a sales page. Now, I'm not saying your language has to sound not cool, but pretty language or cool language isn't what matters on a sales page. What matters on a sales page is to understand what you need to be doing, the why behind the marketing, the why it is that you're doing the things you're doing on a sales page. So you say, okay, well, here's the different blocks. And why am I doing this in block one? Why am I, having this point about mistakes people are making? And understanding those things allows you to actually understand what copy needs to be there. Now, you don't have to be a copywriter, but you got to understand what the purpose is. And if you don't, and I see this over and over again, I will see entrepreneurs who pay a lot of money for copy. And then I look at it and I say, well, okay, it's pretty, but it's not really doing anything. It's not really moving anyone. And I hope copywriters who are on my list don't take this as me, taking a shot at them. It's not just them. I will never forget when I was early on in this journey. I was in a certain group on Facebook full of people who were more in the bro marketing space, I would say. And there were people there who did marketing for local businesses as well. And it's a place that has a culture. You can probably figure out if you've been in the space long enough which group it is. But I would see people come in who had been paid thousands of dollars by a local business to create a funnel for them. And then they would come in and post it and say, it's not converting. Can you guys help me? And this was back in the days when I was still primarily a lawyer, dabbling in the online space. And I could look at the thing they'd done and I said, this looks like it was put together by a toddler. I mean, literally, it was like the design was horrible. There were all kinds of fundamental things wrong with copy, or not with just with copy, but with everything. Kind of like I had a guy reach out to me at some point and offer to help me, to give me a free audit of something like a landing page or something. And he does it. And then he's suggesting, for example, that I should have, he's like, well, you don't have a menu bar. You need to have a menu bar so people can go to all the other places on your site. And all of these things like that if I didn't understand marketing and the whys, maybe I'd be like, oh, okay, I'll pay you thousands of dollars. Even though what he was telling me was the dumbest thing ever. And so when you finally get to the point that you understand marketing, that you get the why, you understand why you're doing this, not just what you're doing, all of a sudden things start to get clearer. And when things get clearer, it's easier. I mean, it's easy to hire people because you hire people after talking with them and you can get a sense of whether they know what they're talking about. And then you can judge the product they give you and say, well, no, this is not right. And then you can do other things like that. Basically, what I'm saying, and this goes back to a very old expression. What I'm going to suggest to you is that too many people in this space are saying, just give me the fish. When what they need to be saying is, can you teach me how to fish? Because when you learn how to fish, in other words, when you learn the why behind your marketing, all of a sudden you can feed yourself for life. You can build your successful business. You're not beholden to anyone. You can figure things out because that's the kind of business we're building. Again, if you were a fisherman, you would learn how to fish. And you'd figure out, hey, the fish are over here because of this, that, and the other, so you could identify those things. I'm simply suggesting you need to do the exact same thing because you're building a marketing business. So that's it. That's all I got. If you like what I'm saying, if you're enjoying kind of the tone I've been taking for the last few episodes where I talked about there is no instruction manual a couple weeks ago, and then last week I talked about what's wrong with the online marketing world and how we need to change it, and now this week where I'm imploring you to learn the why, then you are going to love what I'm teaching at Badass Online Marketing Live, because it's all about this stuff. It's all about this different way of approaching online marketing, approaching it from a more holistic approach, approaching it from the perspective of saying, hey, let's pull in the best pieces of offline marketing. Let's look at Apple and Nike and all those companies and say, what are they doing? And bring that into what we're doing in the online space while also understanding the framework, the why, what's happening behind the scenes. That's what we're talking about. And I'm going to help everybody who's there with me to understand that as well, to figure out what they need to be doing, how they need to be doing it, etc. So I'd love for you to join me. You can get all the details by heading to bobbyklink.com/bomb live. And again, that's BOM live. So bobbyklink.com/bomb live. That's it for this episode. I'll see you again next week. That's it for this episode of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. Make sure to tune in next time. And in the meantime, go out and build the badass business of your dreams.